Many of you know Amber Valletta as a supermodel, actress, fashion icon, activist. But when I first met Amber, I met someone who was all of those things, but also incredibly kind, incredibly smart, and someone with an incredible life story. And I am so honored to have her here today to share that with all of you. Amber Valletta. Thank you.
Thanks, Clicker. All right. Hello, everybody. I just want to express my gratitude to mindbodygreen and to Jason for asking me to be here and to have such a wonderful opportunity to express something that I have experienced and live with on a daily basis. So let's see where to start. I'm coming out to you today, and I'm not coming out to you in the way you think. Some of you might be excited about that. I'm coming out to you today as an addict. I suffer from a disease called addiction. I've had it for as long as I can remember, and I'll explain more to you about that as I go on. Please don't throw any local organic vegetables at my head if you don't like what I'm saying. I hear you've been talking a lot about food and seasonal vegetables. Please don't throw any. My hope is that someone somewhere in this room, out of this room, will hear something that will help them and perhaps get them out of the shadows and the darkness of addiction and bring them into the light. Or maybe you know someone who fights addiction. Maybe they haven't gotten recovery yet. But maybe it'll give you a little more compassion for them, a little more understanding, and for yourself. That's my belief. So I believe that all of us, we kind of live in a society today that is built around avoidance, around distraction, around moving things faster. The world is painful. The world is full of suffering. And, we have a lot of distractions to keep us from kind of focusing on what's really happening. And even just simply like our feelings of inadequacy, our feelings of boredom, our feelings of loneliness, our feelings of heartache, confusion, or even simply like the feeling of this feels really good and I want to make it bigger. I want to make it better. Because it's like there's something about just sitting still with oneself and one's feelings in the moment that somehow feels uncomfortable. There's a vulnerability there. All right, so what are some of the different types of addiction today? You see it with work, people working too much, busyness, exercise, overeating, undereating, gambling, sex, porn, shopping, social media, drugs in my case, and alcohol. So I kind of started trying to get out of myself at a very early age. My belief is that addiction could be some environmental, but I also believe that it's genetic, and I'm predisposed for it. Both my mom and my two grandmothers have all had breast cancer. They all survived, but I am predisposed for breast cancer, and I need to be vigilant. I believe it's the same with drugs and alcohol or any kind of addiction. I think once you kind of feed the monster, there's a switch, and it takes hold. So when I was, I think, about 8, I started trying to get outside of myself. I sniffed markers, I sniffed glue, fingernail polish, anything that could give me a buzz. I started hyperventilating. Then I found drugs that were, around the culture of my family. And I started trying to sneak those, marijuana, there was joints and things like that. By 10, I think I had been high. Sorry, Mom, if you're listening. By By the way, I just want to say this before I continue my story. I'm not a victim. I do not blame my parents. I don't blame my family. And I don't blame anything that happened to me that was negative. I think it does affect me, and I'm sure it made me partially who I am and want to get out of myself. But I know for certain that I'm an addict through and through, and that even if I had had this blessed, amazing childhood, I'd still want to get higher. I'd still want to get out of myself. I'd still want to distract myself. Because I'm uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable being a human being. I thought about it today. I was like, should I have that iced tea? Because I'm really nervous. I just need to, take the edge off, you know? But I didn't. Because today, I'm sober from iced tea. So, anyway, my story continues. I found drugs. I found alcohol. And by the way, the same people who were my age, my cousins, they experienced the same stuff I did. They probably saw more, actually, in some ways, than I did. And none of them are addicts. Just me, the raging addict, okay? So that just shows you that, we all had the same experience. And like I said, I think they saw more than I did in their environment. And none of them are addicts today. So time moves forward. I find more things to do to get outside of myself. By the time I'm 18, I moved to Europe, and I found cocaine and alcohol, and whew, I was good to go. And I was in a business that drugs and alcohol were widely acceptable, and they were given to me. And again, I don't blame anyone. I take full responsibility. But my addiction really kicked up. I didn't have any tools. I was this, kind of, socially inept kid who was thrown into a world that was very sophisticated, and I'm from Oklahoma, and I didn't have that kind of upbringing. I didn't even know which fork to use. I was like, oh, cute little fork. That's so cute. Not that any of that matters. What matters is what I felt. Not the world and what it looked like, but what I felt. I couldn't manage my feelings. And so I had to take something to manage my feelings so that I could cope, so that I could talk to you, so that I could get to work. And just to let you know, I was at the top of my game, probably, I was 20 years old, had everything in front of me, 22, something like that. And I put everything on the line for my addiction, everything. All my friendships, my family, my job. I had a multi-million-dollar deal, and I showed up the first day to shoot this campaign high and drunk. I didn't care. And that's to just show you, addiction takes you to the worst places. I showed up to my uncle's bedside. He was dying, and I was still high, still drunk, and looking for a place to go do another line. It's demoralizing. It's shameful. It's dark, and it thrives on all of those things. I got sober at 25, not because I had the willpower, but because I didn't want to die, and I really believed that there had to be something more than what I was doing. And one of the things I want to talk about, too, is misconception about addiction, that if I was strong enough, if Johnny, you just got to buck up and be a man and will up, don't drink that beer. That's just not how it works with addiction. You can't stop once you start. It doesn't matter where you come from, what gender you are, what socioeconomic you are, what race you are. It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't allow you to stop on sheer willpower. So, I did a lot of things I wouldn't normally do. I got sober. How I stay sober today, 15 years later, is that I continually turn inward. I continually look at my disease because my disease shape shifts. I've had to seek out other programs. I had to seek out other support. I had to learn how to meditate. I had to learn how to get on my knees and pray and be humble. These are all my experiences. This is all my opinion. So I'm not saying this is the be-all, end-all, so please take what you want and leave the rest. But I had to find a spiritual compass. I had to be willing to go out and help other people recover from addiction. I had to be willing to kind of lift the veil off the shame and say, I'm an addict. I can't do this alone. I don't want to do this alone. I don't feel comfortable. Can you help me? What do you know? How do you do it? How do you live day to day? How do you put down your stupid cell phone and just sit quietly and focus when your kid's playing baseball, when you're bored to tears? How do you drive and not act like a raving lunatic? How do you just sit in a meeting and listen and not sit and make judgments of everybody who's sitting in front of you? How do you just turn and be kind to yourself? I needed help. I need help from other people. And so that's the way I stay sober, is I go inward to find out what I need to do to be a better person so that I don't go out and use again, so that I don't find new things to use, because I'm bound to do that. If you tell me like I licked the carpet, it would work, I do it. I mean it. I have to constantly be vigilant and look and find ways to help myself, but to also be of service, to also remember to find humility and humor, and to expose myself. Because I do believe that by me telling the truth today to you all, I get another day sober, because I'm allowing you to see who I am. I'm not hiding in my shame. There's a lot of shame in addiction. You know, it's kind of how it thrives. Darkness, secrets, lies, cheating. It's demoralizing. There's a lot of good people who do things that are really bad. And you think, why do they do those things? It doesn't mean you let them off the hook, but if you could start seeing them in a different way, perhaps our healthcare system would change, and we would offer more resources for people who are addicts. We would help people in jail. We would offer treatment more freely. We would celebrate sobriety, you know? I'd like to have a walk with 10,000 people celebrating sobriety and recovery, because my disease affects not just me, it affects anybody who's around me. I'm like a walking tornado. You know? And so why not get to celebrate it? Why can't I wear a ribbon, a badge of honor that says I'm sober, that I'm in recovery today, like we do for cancer survivors? Why aren't we having fundraisers for, besides, you know, the treatment facilities who are raising money, but why aren't we doing more research and fundraising on addiction? We need to bring it into the light. We live with it every day. I'm not the only one living with it. I bet you there are people here who are living with it in some form. I bet you know somebody who's living with it right now, who's suffering in silence. All right, so what I want to kind of leave on, I guess, is pausing in discomfort, pausing in boredom, pausing in life. What it means to live life on life's terms. And instead of trying to get out of my feelings, trying to have a little more self-love, a little more compassion, a little more kindness for myself and for you, and so that I can sit still in the moment and not try to find something to get me out of myself, to get me out of the feeling, whatever it is, good or bad. And I do believe that if you do something enough, you change. And, you know, science proves it. You know, you start doing something, you do it for a few weeks, you change the neural pathway. It's the same with addiction. If you stop doing a behavior, it will eventually change. I don't know that you can ever go back to that behavior. Sorry. But in my opinion, I don't want to risk it. My life's too good today, so I don't. Lastly, my disease is always an arm's length away from me. That's it. from here to here. And when I dive into dark places in myself that scare me or I feel ugly about, that is where the real growth comes. From pausing, from being willing to look within, from opening up and turning all of it inside out, and asking you for help, and showing you my underbelly. That is where the real growth comes. That's where my empathy comes for you as another human being. So, what actually appears to be dark and scary might actually be full of light.
You were so great.
Thank you. I didn't need these.
You were so great.